Huzzah and good morrow. Today I'm going to show you how we took one of our Ken dolls to make this decorative suit of armor. First of all, I needed to make a cast. So I wrapped my Ken doll in a protective sheet of saran wrap, and I just made sure to go around each arm and each leg separately so that I could make sure that when I got him out of the cast, he had arms and legs. I'm taking some time to wrap around each foot as well. I do that to his hands too, and his thumb and his face. I want as much detail in this cast as possible when it's all done. I started with the feet and worked my way up. It's a pretty repetitive process. I'm taking my time to go around his joints where his shoulders are too. I want to make that as defined as possible. Our Ken is going to be in action. Once I got to the head, I used the bottom half of an old Easter egg to cover his hair. This serves a couple of purposes. It makes his head more round, which is easier to work with. It also protects his hair. He has rooted hair, and it protects his entire head from removing the cast later on. You can see I'm winding the little pieces of cling wrap around. I want it as tight to his body as possible. So again, I want as much definition as I can get. Okay, onto the tape. I'm starting at the head. It's just going to be the easiest place for me to start. And just like I did with the wrap, I'm going to encase each part of his body separately, just so that I have all of the appendages I need. I need his arms and his legs separate so that I can add armor to those later. You can see I'm wrapping pretty tight. Again, this is to make sure I get as much definition of his shape as possible. It's going to make it easier to make him look like he's wearing a suit of armor when he's all done. Taking my time to wrap around his hands and his thumbs separately so that I can make gauntlets. I want a good firm base, and I want to have a very detailed base as much as possible. Our Ken doll is not going to be wearing this. This is a decorative suit of armor. I suppose you could make plates off of my pattern and add them to fabric if you wanted to make a removable actual wearable suit of armor. This is for decoration, but I still want it to look as detailed as I can. Once his hand was wrapped, I moved up the arm, just taking my time to do each separate part and then move on, and I'm going to connect it all with the tape at the end. So you see, now that I have his arms and his legs wrapped, I'm going to connect everything at the body. I want it to be solid, but he's also not going to be able to move. That's okay. Like I said, this is decorative. I'm going to have him in a pose. Our Ken, our good Sir Knight, will be battling a fearsome foe. You can see that I wrapped around each shoulder separately as well before going all the way across his back and his chest. This is just to make sure that I have as much of this plastic lining covered as possible. Okay, now that our Ken is looking like he belongs in Pompeii, it's time to remove him from his little cocoon. I use an X-Acto knife to very carefully cut through just the tape, and if I could, the saran wrap that was underneath. I'm wanting to make sure I don't damage my Ken doll. He's not one that we're just burying in this. He is one that my daughter still plays with. To make it easier to remove him, I slit up the back of his head and then down the back of each arm and each leg. I worked as carefully and gingerly as I could. I want to keep this intact as much as possible, but also it needs to be loose enough to remove off of my Ken. I'm taking my time as I work around his elbows, his feet, and his hands. And he's free. I'm just going to take a moment to survey him really quickly and look for any scratches. I didn't leave any. He's in perfect shape after this. And here's the cast removed off of him. Next it's time to fill it. I have to patch up those back seams where I cut to remove him. I'm using a knitting needle to kind of hold my shape and very lightly apply more tape. I don't want it sticking to the needle. I just want to have enough room to kind of keep the shape and put the tape over. And then I'm using plastic bags. You can use newspaper as well. We have plastic bags. Want to recycle them, so I just tore them up into bits and I stuck them in, and starting again at the feet, using that needle to push them down and try to make it as solid as I can. As with wrapping him in plastic and wrapping him in tape, I'm working each extremity at a time. So I start at the legs and the feet, next I move on to his hands and his arms, and I follow the same process. When I'm all done with that, I'm going to fill up his torso and then finally his head and make sure he's all taped up. Hopefully at the end of this, we'll have a nice solid base to build our armor on. I wanted something lightweight but durable that will hold its shape, so I'm using paperboard to make each plate of armor. This is not historically accurate, however I did try to make several different plates to give it the look of armor. You can see I'm just kind of using bits that I cut off and I'm drafting it on him as I go. It's not perfect by any means, but I did include a link to this printable on our blog spot. Just fair warning, you'll see that I have to make some adjustments as I'm gluing it on him later on. So be prepared. It's more of a guide than an actual pattern. Again, because these are all separate plates, I don't know how well it would work, but you probably could make a wearable suit of armor. I just cut out each of the plates in some kind of a silver material, but attach them to like an actual arm piece or something like that to try to give the same look. I might try that in the future. Right now, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, just being decorative. We're going to actually make a diorama. My child's been wanting one for Halloween for her little Chelsea dolls to go through. So our knight, our good sir knight, will be battling a fearsome dragon. You'll see me make the dragon, at least the head, it's not going to be a full body, in an upcoming video. This is just going to be too long to incorporate that. These are little decorative rosettes. They're taking me forever to draft. I think they're actually called bascues or bascues. I'm not sure what they're actually called, but they go kind of at the shoulder. I believe that they're used to like kind of keep from a lance or something piercing the shoulder. I don't know that much about armor. I did do a lot of costuming for Renaissance festivals about 20 years ago, so it's been a hot minute, but these just add a little flair, a little dimension, so I'm pretty proud with how these turned out. All of these plates were just a kind of experiment. Like I said, made them, drafted them on the actual model here. It's a very long and repetitive process. I'm just kind of trying every piece on as I go. Once I have that fitted to my liking, I flip it over and mirror it for the other side because I'm gonna have them pretty much identical pieces, but they need to be mirrored to be the right and left side, at least most of the pieces. You'll see on my printable, there are some pieces that are the identical on both sides. You'll just have to print 2 of those. I tried to label it as well as I could. Here I am. This is actually 2 years after I started this project. I gave up on it for a while, and I'm just finishing up the plates. I was almost done making the plates when I took a break. You can see that I've painted him with a base coat of gray acrylic, and I'm now working my way to put the plates on. I'm kind of going from the inside out, so they're going to lay on like armor. So the parts around his thighs will be underneath the kneecaps, and so forth and so on. You'll see me add them. I'm working from the feet up, and I'm going from the inside plate out to build it up so it looks like it's layered properly. I wasn't too happy with the boots, but you know, it is what it is. This is actually called a greave. This goes on his calf. And you can see it was a little long even after measuring it, so I cut it down. Like I said, on the printable, there will be a lot of adjustment to make just kind of based on your doll and how he's posed. Ugh, these boots. They wound up not being very historically accurate at all. They look more like the Tin Man than nice, lovely, tight-fitting armor. But you know what? They get the job done. You can see that they only cover the top of his foot. I'm planning on adding more stability on the bottom of his foot. He's gonna be pretty top-heavy, so he's gonna need something more stable at the bottom to help him stand on our base. It was at this point that I decided to insert some wire into the back of his neck and both arms. He's not going to be able to move once all of the plates are on and the glue and the paint is all dried. And I'm wanting to make sure that he holds the pose that I'm looking for. Like I said, our knight will be battling a dragon, so he's going to be holding a shield and a sword. So the wire just helps me put his arms in the place that I want them before adding the plates. It inserts pretty easily since he's just tape and plastic on the inside, so I literally just had to poke it in and then glue it in place. Making some more adjustments and testing the fit of his gauntlets. Those are going to go on last, but I still wanted to make sure they fit before I glued them on. The elbows and the knees are kind of hard. You have to fold the piece in half, glue just the ends, and then kind of push it up so it forms kind of a diamond. It pops out like a little diamond in the center. And then you take the ends and glue them to the inside of the elbow, the inside of the knees. You can see the backs on my knees didn't turn out exactly how I wanted. I fixed that a little later on, or at least disguise it. Here in his breastplate, I'm just adding a few clips. That's going to help me angle it so that it lies exactly how I want it. I added a couple underneath his arms and then on the back plate as well, just to make it conform to his waist and poke out where I wanted it to. He's almost done, at least with the gluing. Going to add those little rosettes. Like I said, they add a nice little touch. They're on some armor, not all armor, but I liked them for ours. Back with the top side of an egg this time. So I chose this side because A, it fit his head a little better, but B, it also looked kind of like the shape of what's called a sallet, which is a type of a helmet that was popular in the medieval times and Renaissance. Now there are holes on the top. I meant to cover those with some twine. Unfortunately, what you can't see is that my camera fell over right about now, and I completely forgot to do that. So I wound up filling the holes in with a little hot glue instead, and then tried to kind of cut off to shave it down so that it was as smooth as possible on the top. On this part as well, I clipped the entire edge of that top to help me conform it around the eggshell so that it sat as flat as possible. All glued together and ready for the next step. I'm going to clean up my edges here. I added some twine around the edges of the cardboard on his helmet to make it look more like it's all one piece once he's completely painted. Onto the feet, I used jumbo-sized popsicle sticks, and I just kind of lined up so there was a little bit past the toe area, and I'm gonna make a line and cut it off, and I made a little decorative edge on the toe area and cut that down. This is going to help him glue to my base. I'm going to use the same method that I did for making the bed. I'm going to use dowels into my base and into the bottom of his foot to help make sure that he stands. He still kind of leans even with that. On yours, you could use like a dowel on the outside to prop him up straight. For mine, I think I'm going to leave him like that because he kind of looks like he's in motion. And I sort of liked it like that. But these popsicle sticks add a little bit of weight to his feet. They make it nice and flat for him to glue to the base, and they just add a little more stability and a little more believability. Now, I wish I would have done something different with the toe and the top of the foot. I wound up trying to just cover it all with hot glue and twine. Up close, it looks kind of messy. From far away, you can't really tell, but some kind of clay or cardboard detail or something probably would have worked a little better. Once he was all completed, I went ahead and began to cut up pieces of netting. I wanted to cover some of the seams. Netting will look kind of like chainmail, so I mixed up some water, tacky glue, black acrylic, put my netting in, and then I just attached it on the areas like under his neck, where the plates by his shoulder and his breastplate and backplate meet, just to make it look like he's got some chainmail underneath, and kind of help disguise that underneath layer, add one more layer of detail. Once that was dry, it was time to paint, and paint some more. I covered him entirely in a flat gray acrylic first, and then off camera I added some silver, folk art silver on top of that, just acrylic. I also took the opportunity to add a few more details with hot glue to his gauntlets and those rosettes. And then because our good Sir Knight is battling a dragon, I used some very watery slurry of a brown acrylic and water, and I did an antiquing technique right around all of the joints of his plates. Just kind of added a nice effect, made him look like he might have been charred a little bit in battle. And then while that was drying, I took the opportunity to draw up a quick shield and sword template. I cut out 2 layers each of cardstock or paperboard. I glued them together, and then I'm just going to paint those with the same acrylic. So you can see I'm gluing the shield together, and I'm going to glue the sword together. I did wind up on top of my silver drawing a nice, simple Crusader's cross, just very medieval looking shield, and I painted that red. I also put a strip of hot glue down the center of the sword just to give a little ridge and a little detail to make it look a little more realistic. Onto the base. I'm covering ye old foam board with some stir sticks and popsicle sticks. I want it to have a wooden look. I'm going to stain it, just cut them down to size, and like I said, I'm going to make dowels out of toothpicks like I did with the bed to help stabilize my knight on top of this. Once that was done, it was on to some final detailing. For our knight, that's going to include covering up some of my mistakes, some of the areas where the chainmail meets the plates. So I'm using leather strips. I just cut them down to size, and I'm going to glue them on top to cover up where his waistband would be. And it's going to look like he's got the little leather straps to hold his plates on. Now, this leather was buff. That's the only kind I had. It was a little too new looking, so you'll see I had to stain it a couple of times just to give it that kind of aged, hard-broiled look that I'm looking for. But this does help to disguise the back of those knees. That was such an eyesore to me. first layer of paint just soaked right in. I just used acrylic mixed with water, and because it's natural leather, it soaked right in, kind of evaporated. So I did go over with more acrylic later on, which you'll see. Here I'm going to assemble our sword. I'm wrapping the handle in the same leather that I use. I'm going to stain that as well. I did off camera paint the hilt gold, but it just didn't look as nice as the silver did. So I actually wind up going over that with washi tape, and hopefully it stays. For me, washi tape never really tends to stick, but hopefully with a layer of Mod Podge it will. Yeah, you can see how much that leather absorbed the stain. So I'm just going over it with much more black, much heavier amount of paint versus water to try to make it look like it's older. Maybe it's been burned a little bit. I do think it ended up looking a lot better. I am getting ready to drill for the dowels. As I did with the bed, I'm starting with the smallest bit just to not fracture the very thin wood. So I go all the way into his foot, and then I pull it out and I just work my way up with my bits until I get a little bit larger than the diameter of the toothpick. So that way I can glue that into the base and into his foot and help secure that. I also added some of the hot glue to the bottom of his feet as well as the dowels, just to make sure that his feet stay completely on the base. And I did use hot glue instead of wood glue. The wood glue just was not going to dry fast enough, and it wasn't sturdy enough to stay in the base and not get sucked up into his foot, which means it wouldn't do any good up there. So hot glue it was, and this wound up working very, very well. I want to glue his shield directly to him. It's technically removable. You'd have to cut the twine that I glued to the back of the shield because it's pretty tight around his arm. But this way you can remove it if you want. I'm just putting a layer of high gloss Mod Podge over all of the silver paint. Again, I'm skipping the parts that are chainmail. I want that to look a little more dull. But anywhere like on his shield, his sword, his plates, those are all covered with high gloss Mod Podge. It added a little extra shine. It's very subtle, but it does help to seal it as well. And here I am adding that washi tape. It does look better, I think. It looks a little more realistic than the gold paint. The gold paint just was not doing it for me. Like I said, I don't know how well this is going to last. We're not going to be playing with him, obviously. He's more for a diorama. So hopefully between sticking this on and then the Mod Podge, it stays. I've just never had much luck with washi tape. And you can see I actually added a layer of paperboard on where that hilt is. That's just to thicken it up to make it look, again, more realistic, give it some more dimension. For the top of the sword, the cap, I used just a little tiny sliver of a stir stick, and I painted that gold. I couldn't get washi tape to stick on that. The gold paint looked okay on that. It's going to be mostly hidden by his hand anyway. And here he is, all ready for battle. Thank you for joining me while I made this suit of armor decorative piece for a dollhouse. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.